There you go. Welcome.
Good morning. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Welcome to WX Live webinar number 143 with Andy Stapleton. This is part 2 of his classes presentation. So it's all yours, Andy.
Morning, morning, morning. Early for us over here, really early for Jeff, but we're getting through this. We talked about a little bit last week about classes and simply creating some simple classes, things like this, and what I'm attempting to do here is give you some building blocks. And as with anything that you put together, whether it be software, whether it be, a house, no matter what, it all takes smaller pieces to make up to the big picture. Everything is broken apart in smaller pieces, a working, manageable deal. As one man says, you cannot eat a whole elephant, but you can eat it one bite at a time. So what we're doing here is basically I'm giving you some basics of classes, and then we build components and build upwards. This has been a journey for me, as a lot of the ones that know me in the group and have known me in the past. I started off in Oracle and Pro COBOL and languages like Fortran 77 and things like this, where oop was usually when you made a mistake. Oops, and you were in trouble. So the journey of getting to an object-oriented methodology has been a journey for me since probably about 6-7 months or maybe 8 months after I started with WinDev. There is a lot of discussion out there about whether it's true OOP or not true OOP. There's true, DBA. There's not true DBs. There's relational databases. There's not true relational databases. The general thing is it works, and it works for me. It does an excellent job, and it speeds up my development processes. So why do I recommend classes? Because tremendously it'll help you put together your applications faster, more solid, and you'll have less code to go hunt and fight and figure out where things are. So today we're going to talk about an abstract class. An abstract class this is the first year, version 19 is the first year that abstract classes have been available for WinDev. There's a couple of rules for abstract classes, a few of them in here. We're going to talk about those for just a second. And then I have a link down here at the bottom, which is the link to the abstract classes on the help file of WinDev. An abstract class, when it's defined as abstract, you cannot instantiate it. In other words, you can't declare it and use it directly. I cannot call a method from my WinDev code of the abstract class directly. You can only use it in another class, and basically it is a base class of common methods. In other words, setup of fields, setup of methods, properties, things that you use in other classes. So it's basically an include file for us old farts that run around and used to use include files and everything. But that's what it is. It's basically an include file. What is the purpose of this? Let's kind of go through that a little bit. Let me switch out of this now. And let's get over here. This is the CCS Manager class. This is for those that have my classes already and starting to use them. This is one piece of it, and it's included in every file management class, but we're going to go over it. What I've done here is basically put in some things that I use in or can or mostly use in every class that I have out there. Everything uses one of these items. We have some certain constants that we use, which is your add, change, delete, refresh, commas, your fetch types, whatever you need. Those are constants that's used throughout all of the classes. So I don't have to declare them at the top of every class. I include this class, and guess what? I now have every one of those values there. The other thing is I inherit my error handling class in here, and that way I can use all my error handling at the same time. Then I have a bunch of fields that I use a lot of times. I have the filters that I use, primary key values, sort columns for tables, order bys, page sizes, a data source, my array fields, all kinds of things that I use within certain classes to claim those as well. And then I have some public areas that I use, which is one is the connection. That's my connection to either the Hyperfile Client Server database or to MS SQL or Postgres, whichever I'm currently attaching to. It has whether I want to store the XML local, that is for history for mobile devices and stuff like that. Auto testing, web service access in case it is a mobile program and I want to use access to the web service for whatever reason.
Hey,
and
Andy,
then, of course, our encryption. Yeah.
could you make your code a little bit bigger, please?
Oh, I certainly can. I forgot about that.
Thank you, sir.
Work with me here. There it is. How's that?
One more click.
Sometimes this does not want to help much.
There you go. That looks better.
So basically what I've got here is just every one of the fields and stuff that I use in my other classes. So that way you can put them in once and don't worry about them again. That's the whole purpose about OOP programming in the first place, is to code it once and then generically not have to do anything about it. Inside the CCS Manager classes, there is a lot of properties as well. I mean, every one of these fields has a property that goes with it. So I've got a tremendous amount of properties with it too. We won't go through this, too much, but basically different things that concatenate items and go through that. The main part is getting down to the methods themselves and discussing those. So I've got a lot of properties that I use with it, and let's kind of get down to a method and start from there. Okay. Now, you'll notice that most all of my methods have a virtual on there. The reason for the virtual is that I can override that method and write it my own way. Okay? I can change how it works. You'll also notice that in an abstract class, there is no file access. Okay? I can manage anything dealing with out of the other classes. I can manage tables from the screen. I can manage a lot of things, but I cannot do any file access inside the abstract class. So what that is all done in my main file manager class, and it utilizes these methods to do things. Okay? So there's a lot of indirection being used currently in these methods. This is probably one of the most powerful pieces that WinDev provides for you, is the ability to use these indirection operators inside your classes. So I don't have to recode an update table or an add array or a delete array any way I want. It's already there. All I have to do is use the indirection to tell it what I want to do. Okay? Simple as that. I don't have to do anything more. So I've got some of the main pieces here. You got an add, change, and delete functionality that's being used in every one of them, and it's got a, not only does the H add, H modify, and H delete to the table, but it also needs to manage the array values that they match up to, because I use arrays for all my screen to make it ability to do your searches, your resorting, all of that fancy stuff that everybody likes to see without having to do a tremendous amount of coding for it. So in here, I've got these methods that says, okay, here's what I need to add to the array, I need to update the array, I need to delete from the array, whatever I need to do. Okay, and I write them via indirections as I go. Now, if there's any questions on the methods or what is being written inside the method, go ahead and ask. We'll explain what the method is doing also. I wanted to kind of point out that the abstract class, no matter what we're doing, as you can see, really does nothing at all to the file. Okay?
Yeah, there are no questions yet, Andy.
Okay, that's cool. Thanks. I even have the methodology here to add, change, and delete. I tell it to add, change, and delete inside here, so I don't have to code that again either. I have the rec save functionality in here. I have add, change, and delete. I have the refresh record, so you know how you refresh either by whatever method it is. And you can see here that I've got the, well, I'm sorry, I do have the add. It's a virtual. Maybe an old one. So we go through, and you've got every one of the functionalities that you can deal with in here, including the fetch next vals, everything that I use in every one of the methods. So let's go see how we put that into one of our other classes. And I'm going to go ahead and open up. These are all classes. You can see it inherits from CCS Manager class. The CCS Manager class now has part of this class I just created. And what this part does is it actually pulls some data from MS SQL and brings it back. The thing that I'm doing here is you notice I didn't redeclare everything. All I did was declare a few things that I have to use inside this class, which is what arrays that I want, what the record structure that I want, and then I go ahead and set up certain fields of saying, okay, well, this is my array record field, this is the primary key of the table, this is the table name, and this is the alias I want to call the table in the SQL statement. From here, I can call any one of those methods. Okay, now here's where we get into it. The refresh by ID, as an example, that is inside the CCS Manager class. If I hit F2 right there, you can see it pops up with two different ones. That's because I overloaded this system. So if I go to the Record Manager class here, it goes, you can see where I call it directly to the CCS Manager class to do the refresh. The file to memory and the memory to file is what you can't do inside the abstract class, but I can do everything else. So I do the refresh by ID, which goes in here and says, okay, go get it. Do the hread seek first. If I find it, return true, and I'm going to return a true or false that I found it on. If I find it, then I'm going to move the file to memory and return the value. Okay. Now this is done throughout a big chunk of all of these. Okay. You can see where we're calling the same thing. Again, rec save is not in this class. I don't have to write it here. All I do is call the rec save there, and that brings up the rec save that's in my abstract class. You can see it flipping over to the abstract class. Does the job and comes back, and then all I have to do is the file to memory or memory to file. That's what I have to do in this system. Okay. Here's the key thing about it. Other than a few renames, I don't have to do hardly any code to make it work. Let me kind of impress upon it and we're going to actually create a class out of this. I've created a file manager class. Now what that is basically all of the code static. And I rename it, then fill in the fields I want, and I've got the entire data structure ready to go. We're kind of done, dirty, we're finished. I don't ever rename that file manager class. I keep it as a read only on the deal, so that way I don't rename it by accident. And it allows me to, in essence, put together the class variables for a screen or function that I want to do in literally minutes instead of 30 minutes to an hour. Okay? So it's much, much faster to manage. So the abstract class itself handles all of the mundane things. Okay, well, let's add a few more things to it, just a deal. One of the things is, say I want to do do an address setup, so where I have an address for a label. Well, I can put in my abstract class a method to do the label functionality and tell it what kind of label I want and bring it back, and I never have to code it again. It's there. So all I have to do is send the fields I want for the label and bring them back. If I want to concatenate first name, last name, middle initial in 3 different methods, either last name, first name, last name, middle initial, or no middle initial, I can make an abstract method in my abstract class to do that, and I won't have to ever code that again. I don't have to make it a global. I don't have to do anything. It's there constantly. And all I have to do is call that, and it works. The idea behind the classes, or the biggest benefit is behind the classes, is that you only have to write it once. Okay? And since you're only writing it once, you don't have to constantly have another copy of this, another copy of that. It makes it so much easier to manage your code. Now, that doesn't mean you have to change it once in a while to fix what you need, but that's part of the deal about the virtual, when I can override the virtual method and code it the way I want to for that one-off instance. The one-off change is basically what it is. Okay? So let's put together the file manager class, and I'm going to go ahead and we'll do the request freight one. This is a file structure called request freight for American Litho that we deal with, and I'm going to create a whole new one. And so, in essence, like I said, I take the file manager class. So what I'm going to do is open up that file manager class. Remember last week we talked about the repository. I'm going into the repository right now. That's where I'm going, and I'm just going to give me the file manager class. There's my file management class. Now, the file management class is a copy of everything that I need. It has every bit of all the code in there all ready to go. I've got every bit of the code that I need to manage my screen, manage my variables, manage my tables, my loopers, whatever I need is in there. And all I have to do now is tell it, hey, I want you to work with that request freight. So here's where I'm going to do a save as. And when it comes up, it's going to say, well, what do you want to name it? Well, I call it request freight. So I have a standard naming convention of request freight, which is the file name. And then I always put class at the end. And if I can spell freight right, I'll be better off. I always put class at the ends because this is my data class. It's not my record class. This is my data class, and this is exactly what I want to call it. Once I do that, now, of course, it's no longer read-only. I can change everything. And then the last thing I got to do, or the last couple things I got to do, is you can notice that you got an error for the UML classes. UML classes, I'm going to search for that in the current code view. I'm going to grab them all, and I'm going to name it request freight. That is the actual file name or UML class name that I generated the UML from. And it's going to say, do you want to replace it all 6? Yep, I want to replace it all 6. You'll notice that they turn blue because there's a class over here that we already opened up. You remember my class here? That's a UML class that gets generated from your analysis. We'll go through that next week. We'll go through the UML analysis and what you can do with these. And so I have to put that in here because that's what I want to use. Well, the last thing I need to do is I need to get the primary key fields. And if you don't know what they are, just type in request master. And then you can find the ID. What it is probably in the G's. There it is, request GID. That's the one I want. No, I did not name these, Pete. This was not me. This was already done before I got here. I got the file name, which I'm just going to be request fade again. And what do I want to call it? RF. That's going to be my deal for it. Do I need to do anything else? No, I'm done. That's it. I am ready to use this in a screen variable or however I want to do. If I want to instantiate it and do a select statement from it, I can right now because the select statement uses these variables, these here, the array field, the primary key, database name, and file name, to actually create the SQL statement on the fly and give me what I'm looking for. Okay? So now I can actually go start coding a screen right now and just move over from there. That's you're pretty much done. I mean, just kind of think of the abstract class itself, okay, as your bucket of tools that you use wherever you go. Because the bucket of tools is all the little functions, all the little things that you're going to use everywhere you go. The pieces that you have. If you have if you're in manufacturing or you're in transport, one of the things like I know that I'm going to be adding in here is GPS setup. I've been working with the mobile and now with version 20, the mapping functionality that's there. Well, I'm going to write a whole setup in some of the CCS manager class to manage the GPS, the geolocation, all of that stuff to be able to pull it directly for the maps without having to code it every time I go into it. And I'll have them there whether I use them or not. I'm beginning to believe that, and I'm not entirely sure, but I'm beginning to believe that PC Soft discards things that you don't normally use. In other words, I know they do it with fields. If you don't use the fields in the instantiation, that they discard everything that you don't have. Okay? Because I've had that happen to me. But whether or not that it uses the fields or discards, methods and stuff out that you don't use, I'm not quite sure yet. But I do like the fact is now, in essence, I've got a bucket where I can put all my functions, all my functionality, the things that I want to do with any of my classes is all in one inherited class called an abstract class that allows me to do anything that I want to do. You just got to know some indirection. Obviously, you got to work with indirection with this because it has no idea what it's being included into. You've got to tell it what it's being included into, okay? Then you also got to put virtual on a lot of these in case that you want to change the virtual. Now, let me talk about the virtual just for a second here because there's one that I do that with. I think it's, no. It should be refresh. Second here. Refresh by SQL. Let me find that. There it is. Okay, so we have refresh by SQL. If you notice that all it says is rep val is Boolean, false, return false. That's all it does. It doesn't do anything more. Well, that's because you had no idea what SQL statement to put to it in the first place, let alone a connection and all that other stuff. You have no clue what to do. There's a lot of times when you're using direct SQL that if you're joining multiple tables together and you do a refresh by ID, well then what you're viewing on the screen no longer works. Fields become up missing and things like this, so you're ending up saying, okay, well how do I get that? Well, we basically go and do exactly the same thing. We go get, we take the SQL statement that got the data originally and reapply it to a refresh by SQL instead and just make a switch and say, I want this refreshed this way. So what you do here is in the request freight class, where I want that, I will go down and I will right mouse click and I will add a method and I will call it refresh by SQL. Okay, I'm going to add it. Now it's down here, but you notice it's got a little arrow, you know, underscore. It's telling you it's wrong. Okay, and what that, if you can't read that, I'll read it to you. The refresh by SQL methods of request freight class and the methods CCS manager class, base class, does not have the same prototype. The compiler cannot resolve the ambiguity between a redefined method and a syntax method. Press F1 for more details. In essence, what it's telling you, hey, we got to pass the variable. That's what it's telling you. Now I've got this. Now there's two things about a virtual. I can tell it to call the virtual item, which is the same thing that I do up here. As you can see, refresh by key. You see where I'm doing it right here. I'm telling it to call that one, do that job, then come back here and do what I want to do here. That's exactly the same thing. But what I'm going to do here is just override it entirely. I can do an SQL statement equals, and let's do string. Okay. And then code the rest of it of SQL. Then we can cheat. And the only thing I do here that's the only one. SSTMT. Give me that one. And then I do a file to memory, rec, DS, STMT. Okay, I'm good to go. So I can, I can write that directly as it is and override whatever's in the abstract class immediately without having to worry about it calling it. But a lot of the reasons for virtual classes is to be able to execute whatever code you have in the main class or your abstract class, and then do something with it when I'm here, when I come back, which is what I'm doing here. A refresh by key tells it, okay, here's the field name and the value. Go over to the abstract class, and I'll show you what it's doing. Do an hread seek on the DB file name. I send it for the field name and the value. And if I find it, return true. Otherwise, since it's already defaulted false, it'll return false. Well, if it comes back to true, then I'm going to instantiate a new, since I'm bringing back a brand new one, I'm going to instantiate a new instance of rec, and I'm going to move that file to memory right off the bat from the DB file name, and I'm good to go. DB file name is a variable. The DB file name is exactly what I put up here. It now is referenced by request freight. Okay. Questions? Confusions?
No questions yet.
Glassy eyes. Everybody got glassy eyes on this. Okay, kind of go back over a little bit then. What is an abstract class? It's your toolbox. It's your toolbox of common functions, common functionality that you have to use. There is lots, in my opinion, of expertise out here in the WinDev community that, to me, the abstract classes should be one thing that's thrown around everywhere. People making up abstract classes and giving them away, because you're not really tying it directly to a file or tying it directly to something that you have. It is abstract. It is, you know, this is how I handle a table. I can do an entire table functionality as an abstract class and never write one line of code in my window if I want to. I can do the same thing with a looper. I can do the same thing with all kinds of functionality that's out there. So abstract classes, I think that even though that you may be fairly new at looking at OOP or fairly new looking at classes entirely, I think it's something that you should spend a little bit of time in understanding and experimenting, putting some stuff in there to say, oh, wow, I can do that and I can do that. The two things that it's going to give you an advantage over, in my opinion, is one, you will begin to work with indirection and things like that, and you'll start to understand what indirection does or doesn't do, and help yourself out to be able to find things and work with that, because you've got to be abstract. You got to be not tied to its specific items. Whatever you pass it back and forth. You got to look and see that you're doing things that's not going to affect other classes. Remember that you're passing by address, not by value. So if you change a value, you can change it in other classes too, other areas too. I've had that happen to me if I call one from another class. In other words, it changed the action type is what happened to me. But I think it's something you should take a hard look at and understand how it works, because it's going to make your life easier, going to make your programming easier, and it's rarely going to speed up what you can get done. It really can speed up what you can get done, especially if you can borrow it from other people. Man, I got almost 23 minutes left, don't I, buddy? Anybody want to play with 20?
You must be talking fast, Andy.
Oh, man, I'm, you know, for a Southern boy, I was moving, motivated.
Oh, we do have a question.
Oh, cool. Go ahead.
1 second. This question is from Dan Mattis. When do you use indirection versus, I think, let me read it again. When do you use indirection versus a normal variable?
I get confused on that often myself, Dan. So let me kind of give you somewhat of a hint with that. If you hit F1 here on the H found, you'll come up and you'll see where it says file name, okay? And then it comes underneath here, optional character string with or without quotes, okay? That's telling me, especially with or without, is telling me that can be used as a variable, okay? Where I know that, so far I know that I cannot is, like in these instances here. If I look up array seek for the same thing, as an example, says array name. It doesn't say with or without quotes. It just says give me the array name, period. So that's telling me the only way to do it is actually type in the array name. So in order to say, well, I can't use AARREC because that may not be the name of the array. I may have it as something else entirely. That's when I know I have to use indirection, because array field is the value ARRREC. And by putting the brackets around that, I'm saying don't use the variable, use what's in the variable. Okay? Does that clarify it for you? Hey.
Yeah, no other question yet.
Cool. I am. One of the things that I've been kind of playing with is off the mobile. They don't have many help files yet, but I've been kind of experimenting with the tabs, the new tear-off tabs and stuff that they have. So it won't be long, and I'll have a deal put together for that you may like. And basically, I've kind of figured out that it uses internal windows within the tabs. I've got to work out some more pieces to it, but it's going to be fun to mess with. But so far, I think that one of the things that I like the most is what they're doing with their editor. So hang on here a second. And I'll open it up for those that haven't got 20 yet, to kind of give you a little bit of a clue on what's happening with the editor. This little sneak.
We have a couple of questions again.
Go ahead.
Dan has a follow-up that says kind of.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And then Jack Wilson, I've got an older version of the classes from a previous dev car. Are the latest and greatest versions of these classes available for download?
Yep. I'll put them. Actually, if you got the repository last week, you've got them. But I'll strip them out and make a separate zip file of them as well.
Okay, and another one from Dan.
Yeah.
How about overload? You mentioned to use
overloading
it for after the abstract class. Can you do pre-processing also? Did I read that correctly?
Pre-processing.
Yeah, it says, how about overload? You mentioned to use it for after the abstract class. Can you do pre-processing also?
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, I can come into if you're talking about something. Let me try to get down here and that's if I got it right. Right here, I can certainly do something above the call to the refresh by ID. You know, if there's some kind of functionality that does there. Yeah, I mean, if that's what you mean. Either that or I don't quite understand what you're looking for. Now, if you're talking about the execute ancestor that happens when you overload the control using it, I'm not sure, Dan.
I wish this is one of those times that we could give him the mic, let him talk.
I'll tell you what, Dan, let's get together afterwards. Let's talk a little bit on Skype, and then if it's irrelevant, we'll put something out on the forum for it, okay? So I can kind of understand what you're looking for, because it's obviously something you're running into in your code.
Okay, he has a follow-up question or a clarification. Methods before the abstract class function.
Methods before the abstract class function. No, I got no clue. I can create any call I want in here, not even call anything in the abstract.
Okay, he has an example here.
Okay. That helps. Can I see that?
Yes, if you go over and click, if you go back to the console and then click Q&A area, it says example. If I did not want to save a record, if some other file should prevent it.
If I do not want to save a record, if some other file should prevent it. Oh, yeah. I mean, okay. I don't know necessarily that you want to check to see whether the record's already been changed and abort the save if that's true, or something like that is what you're looking for, right, Dan?
He said he'll get with you later.
Okay. All right. I think I know what you're going down, but we'll have to talk about it for a few minutes, and I can get you around it pretty easy.
Okay, and Jack has another question.
Yeah.
Repository would be fine.
Okay.
I missed how to get that when I watched last week's webinar.
It's posted up on the in the webinars area where the webinars are. It should be as one of the links after the deal. If it's not, let me know. I know I posted up there online.
It was a Dropbox.
I can get you the link. Yeah, it's a Dropbox link is what it is. And the repository has everything that I use and a few things that are in flux. So, I mean, don't treat everything in there as that it's a finished, polished. But all of the some of the controls, add, change, delete control, save controls, the manager class, file management class, and a few other ones are certainly good to go. They get the Nexmo class in there, a few things like that. Okay. Back to trying to play here, Dan. Yeah, I'm messing up my timing here. Okay. This is much better. How do you know, a lot of times you don't know where you're at. I like this because it doesn't show that unless you're in that code area. That's number one. I really like that. The other thing they've done is you can also, and man, you got to be careful. They need to work on that. You can see I'm zooming in and zooming out the Project Explorer. That is one touchy sucker, but if they get that right, I'm going to be real happy. Now I can't get it back up. There it goes. They got a little bit of work to do on it, but it's working. I do like this quite a bit. I do like this quite a bit. And then if you're using variables, I'm going to see if I can query task, see what kind of files they have in here. List. Notice that they have 3 dots after everything. So I can kind of jump around and do things like this. That gives me the list select. So if I just have list select, then I can click that and it'll only show me the items for list select count, plus, and minus. So instead of just going nuts about pulling everything, it gives me a little bit of way to kind of filter the list is what it does, which is pretty neat. If anybody hadn't been in this yet, I'm starting to work with the mobile 20 because I needed some different advantages, and they now have the table control for it. So I know for sure, since somebody's asked me already what I will be going through in the DEF CON later on this fall. I will be going through mobile and mapping on the mobile. So we will do mobile and mapping and have a WinDev program for the mapping as well.
Well, that sounds good.
That's what I'm doing.
Jack responded. He said he found it.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. Any questions on anything like this? Feel free to post them up there on Google+. I think that it has been it has done a wonderful job out there so far. I think there's a lot of information that we've been able to put up there. I am gobsmacked proud that we now have over 160 plus members in our group up there on Google+, and I think it's great. I think that's fantastic. Invite your friends and neighbors, obviously. So, and everybody's been very nice about keeping it nice and straightforward and helping people out, and that was the purpose behind it. So I'm really proud of that. If anybody doesn't know that, kudos to everybody that's contributed, and the more that contributes, the better off we are. So please do so when you find a tidbit. Go from there. Go ahead.
No other questions right now.
Okay. All right. All I can say is thanks for being with me this morning. Any questions on the abstract class, feel free to discuss it out on the forums. We'll talk about it some more next week. Next week we will go through and we will start putting together a little bit, or do you have something else for next week?
Hey, yeah, Glenn is going to be up next week.
Okay. All right. In 2 weeks, in 2 weeks, I believe, we will go over we will start building a very simple example program with the different classes that we have. We'll go over the file management class in depth and then start up our new application that we're going to build utilizing the classes and all the pieces with it. And just for Jeff's sake, and only because of Jeff, I'm going to be using Hyperfile with it. That'll make Jeff happy.
Yeah.
And a few other people.
He's going, what? What? Somebody talking to me? I was asleep.
It's a step down for you, I'm sorry to say, but you'll make a lot of people happy.
I will tell you this, that I have, there has been a couple of SQL statements that I've thrown at them that really kind of told me that that it is definitely not going to be high on my list for usage. And one of them is a very, what we call a exist statement, where you're saying, give me every bit of these records from this file where some field exists in another file. And I kicked one off, and 6 hours later it was still running.
All right, is that all you have this week, Andy?
That's all I have this week.
Okay, well, thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us. And as always, this is available on YouTube, and we'll be posting links to it on the Google Plus community and on other venues. Last words are yours, Andy.
Y'all be good or be good at it. We'll talk to y'all later, okay?